I don't think anyone can deny that a major part of the Halloween season is nostalgia. And while there are so many great horror movies for the spooky season that are made today, sometimes we just want to go back in time. So today we're going to be talking about 10 horror movies, maybe underrated horror movies from the 80s and 90s that you can watch this spooky season. And as a bonus, they're all streaming right now for free on Tubi. I'm your Halloween host, Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's get started.
Return of the Living Dead, Part 2.
Return of the Living Dead Part 2 from 1988. Of course, the sequel to the original film from 1985, and this is a really weird version of a sequel. It's kind of a new movie where it's about new characters, but it plays out a lot of the exact same situations as the first film, and even Tom Matthews and James Karen are back in here, even though they died in the first movie, as different characters who go through the exact same slowly turning into a zombie process. It's bizarre. It's part sequel, it's part remake, and when I first saw this movie, I hated it for that reason. I was so thrown off. I was like, Return of the Living Dead is a great movie. What is this weird, inferior version of the exact same thing? But a weird thing has happened to me over the years. Slowly, this has crept into my brain as being a little bit of a favorite. It's become a movie that I will throw on in the background a lot. Pretty frequently, I'll go to a streaming service and just throw on Return of the Living Dead Part 2 and just have it on while I'm doing stuff. And doing that over and over again, it's become something that I really enjoy. I would say this is a less punk rock edgy version of Return of the Living Dead and more of a suburban kid-friendly version. It is rated R. It's got the zombie gore. It's got the really cool effects, the makeup, the puppetry. There are some awesome looking zombies in this. But it feels like the tone of a kid's movie. You do have a kid as one of the main characters. You got a few other new characters throughout here that play it a little bit more grounded than Tom Matthews and James Karen are, or even Suzanne Snyder is Tom Matthews' new girlfriend, and she's actually really fun in this movie. It even shows in the soundtrack, with it being less punk, more mainstream 80s punk rock. It even ends with a crazy 80s version of the Monster Mash. But all of that has endeared me to this movie. I now think it's really fun. If you're just binging the first two movies, this one's going to throw you off and it's just going to seem like an insane idea. And it is. But if you put yourself with enough distance, just accept this one for what it is. It's a really good time and I can't help but enjoy it. The Black Room from 1982.
I just want to know one thing up front. Are there any restrictions?
Restrictions? No.
A dirtbag husband rents a spare room from two siblings to use for his extramarital sexual conquests, unaware that they're serial killers who slowly murder every woman he brings there. Big departure from the last film we talked about. This is a very dark, very adult horror film that I actually blind bought from Vinegar Syndrome, and I'm glad I did because it's a really cool movie, but it is streaming for free on Tubi. And it's kind of a moral cautionary tale, right? About stepping out on your marriage, on typical sexual norms, and there being some pretty extreme consequences. It is a pretty interesting film about marriage. The main couple is in most ways a perfect couple. They're very much in love. They have great kids. They're both really good parents. But this guy just has this whole other life, this whole other side to him that his wife doesn't know about for most of the movie. So his duality is pretty fascinating, but even more so the interesting ways that she deals with it as she finds out more and more, and their relationship growing in strange ways out of it. But really the horror is coming from this brother and sister that he's renting this black room from. It's a little bit of a vampiric story where one of them needs blood and they're slowly draining the blood from people that get brought there. So it's weird, it's creepy. For most of it, it really just plays like a drama, and a pretty good one, until it gets a much more horror-packed, violent, scary finale. The Black Room is very sleazy, very creepy, very adult, but if you're in the mood for something very different, I think this could be a good one.
I think it's called Amityville Manors.
80s
Amityville 1992. It's About Time from, well, 1992. This is one of the many Amityville sequels, and we really need to talk about the Amityville series more on this show. In fact, I need to watch more of them because there's so many, and I've only seen a certain portion. But this is one that I definitely have seen, and I really like. Now, it's directed by Tony Randall, the director of Hellraiser 2, and starring the dad from the Monster Squad. And it's about a family, except the mother role in here is the dad's former girlfriend, but not current girlfriend, just there to help out with the kids. Gosh, I wonder if they're gonna get back together over the course of the film. Oh, she even brings her boyfriend over.
You remember Leonard?
This is a weird situation. But he returns home from a business trip with a surprise, an old clock that he rescued from a soon-to-be demolished mansion in Amityville, and it brings about seemingly unstoppable demonic forces. So this is one of those classic cursed object movies. The Warrens would love to have this clock in their little museum, and I think this one is just so much fun. It is buck wild. I mean, there is so much bonkers stuff that happens in here. The Amityville series as a whole tends to know that a haunted house movie doesn't tend to have a lot of rules. You can kind of do whatever you want. And this one really does, with some crazy kills, a bunch of really weird possession stuff. But on the other hand, it has mostly good, strong actors. It visually looks great. And it's got that cozy kind of 90s feel that I love. I love a 90s suburb. There's even a little bit of a fall feeling to this. And in the fashions, the slang, the practical effects, it's just that peak kind of 90s feel. And there's even this occultist neighbor that they bring in to try to solve this, and she's a really fun character. This is definitely one of the Amityville films that I have enjoyed the most. I think it's kind of a blast.
The Prowler.
The Prowler from 1981. Now, I love the way this classic slasher opens. It's got this prologue taking place in the 1940s that I think really elevates it to having this kind of classy feel. The period recreation is really good. It's a graduation dance that turns to murder. And cutting back to present day in the 80s, the town is finally doing this graduation dance once again, but the Prowler seems to be back to kill people. Now, this is a classic whodunit slasher that plays out the tropes. It doesn't really do anything particularly different. It didn't need to, because this was 1981 and this was the real heyday of the building of the slasher genre. And I just think when it comes to spooky season, you gotta watch a slasher movie. And The Prowler is so much fun. Now, one thing that I love about it is it has particularly brutal kills. They aren't quick. There is stretched out suffering for the pleasure of this horrible killer. Tom Savini actually did the effects. He did such a good job. The practical effects are so much fun here. And I love the look of the killer. He looks like this soldier with his face obscured. He uses a variety of weapons, which is cool, like a pitchfork most famously, but even a sawed-off shotgun at one point, which kind of breaks the rules of the slasher genre. The characters are solid enough. I don't think they're some of the biggest standouts of 80s slashers, but they're good. You've even got Farley Granger actually in a supporting role, who I know from classic Hollywood days, like when he was doing stuff with Hitchcock, like Rope and Strangers on a Train. So it's really cool to see him here. He's just another thing that elevates this a bit. While The Prowler wasn't particularly successful when it first came out, it's definitely a cult film today, and it's one of my favorites of those one and done 80s slashers. Spellbinder from 1988.
You will regret this for as long as you live.
A man would do anything for a girl like her.
After leaving work one night, a Los Angeles attorney rescues a young, beautiful woman from an abusive boyfriend. Jeff soon becomes romantically involved with her and embroiled in a web of occultism that follows her. This is one that I discovered for the first time just this year, actually watching it on Tubi, and it has become such a favorite for me. I think it's such a special little movie because it is a witch movie. It's about Kelly Preston, who actually is a witch, who has escaped a witch's coven, and this guy's trying to help her, save her from being pulled back into it. So it's got a great occult angle, but the overall feeling of the movie kind of feels like a classic 90s thriller, even though it's coming out just a little bit before the 90s. In the 80s, 90s, I think it was just such a special time in Hollywood history where pretty much any slick Hollywood production coming out during this time just had a certain level of craft behind it that you could always trust. And the feeling of these movies is just so comfortable for me. I love watching films from this era, and Spellbinder is a perfect example of what makes movies from this time so special, such a nostalgic feel. While I do think it succeeds a little bit more as a sexy thriller, and Kelly Preston is in it, so it is definitely a sexy movie, than as a scary horror movie. But I actually talked about this movie a little while ago, and my parents watched that video, and this movie sparked these memories in my mom that she actually saw this when it first came out in theaters, and it terrified her. Like, she thought the ending was so disturbing. And of all the films that I've talked about, I never thought she would tell me the one that really scared her was Spellbinder. That seemed odd to me, but hey, if you want to go by my mom's judgment, this is a frightening movie, so check it out to get scared.
Howling 2.
The Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf from 1985. After the lead of the first Howling, Karen White, dies, her brother learns that she was a werewolf, leading him to a group of hunters to track down the powerful werewolf queen, Stirba, in Transylvania. So this was actually another one that I blind bought from Vinegar Syndrome. A lot of Vinegar Syndrome stuff is on Tubi for free, guys. That's a pro tip. And I'd always heard how terrible this movie was, and having watched it, I don't think it's as bad as everybody says, although it is definitely a goofy, campy, ridiculous horror movie. But for a guy like me, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Something that I love about this is it feels part trashy 80s horror with some peak 80s vibes, ridiculous 80s vibes, even Christopher Lee wearing these glasses. But also, it feels kind of like a classic gothic horror movie. It's like 80s cheese meets Hammer horror. And that is partially because Christopher Lee is in it. And Christopher Lee apparently did this because he'd never done a werewolf movie and just wanted to do one. But he later apologized to Joe Dante for being in this movie. Joe Dante, of course, the director of the original Howling, which is a classic. But not just because of his presence, they actually go to Transylvania in here, and you do get like explicitly gothic horror kind of a look. There in Transylvania, they meet the werewolf queen, who is played by Sybil Danning, in an incredibly corny, over-the-top performance that's a lot of fun. If you are comparing this to the original The Howling, the werewolves are going to be a big disappointment for you. I mean, the werewolves in The Howling, they might be the greatest werewolves of all time, just visually. And here, the director was disappointed that the studio sent him monkey suits for the werewolves. Not werewolf suits, monkey suits. And they wouldn't do anything about it, so he just had to make do. I actually think he did a surprisingly good job, considering what he was given. They don't look too bad, but not near as good as the first The Howling. And that's the case with most of the movie, but I still think it's fun, and it's just a weird, campy oddity that's even got a little bit of Halloween at the end of the film.
A little girl was murdered in that haunted house.
HauntedWeen from 1991. Eddie brutally murdered a little girl when he was a kid, and now as an adult, he's back. When some fraternity guys and sorority girls decide to put together a haunted house attraction in his childhood home, he becomes a part of the haunt to kill them all. Now, I talked about this in my Halloween video last year because it is a really fun Halloween movie that I enjoy, but I wanted to highlight it again because at that time it was not available on streaming for any price. You could only get it in an expensive Vinegar Syndrome box set, but now it's for free on Tubi, so anybody can check it out, and I gotta recommend this thing because it's so fun. Now, it's a regional film that was made in Kentucky. Most of the actors were Kentucky college students, but despite its low budget, it's really entertaining. I actually think the actors are a big part of that. Now, the acting is not great, but it's fun. It's over the top. It's silly in a joyful way where you just feel like you're having fun with a group of good people rather than just watching a bunch of amateurs. Like, I like all the thick Kentucky accents, like this one guy with the thickest accent I've ever heard in my life.
Oh man, I hate to wash my own car, much less somebody else's. Let's steal the car and sell it.
As a Halloween slasher, I think it delivers. The Halloween decorations within the haunt are really cool, so you get to feel like you're watching something festive, but the killer isn't just slowly going around killing people, trying to like blend in. He's making a production out of his killings. Like he's putting on a show for the audience while they cheer, thinking it's all fake, and that's different. There are a lot of slasher movies made these days within haunted house attractions, but this one is a little bit crazier with it than a lot of them are, and he gets to wear a variety of wild masks. It's just never boring. And when you're watching a cheap 80s slasher or 90s slasher, early 90s, that's what you need. This one delivers.
The riots began because the stores could not meet the demands of Sutter Kane's novel, In the Mouth of Madness.
In the Mouth of Madness from 1994. This is John Carpenter's final entry in his unofficial Apocalypse trilogy following The Thing and Prince of Darkness. And it's about an insurance investigator who begins discovering the impact of a horror writer's books on his fans is more than inspirational. This is one of my favorite Lovecraftian movies of all time. Even though it's not technically a Lovecraft film, this writer that the film is about, Sutter Kane, is definitely a clear stand-in for H.P. Lovecraft with a little bit of Stephen King thrown in there, and the film's monsters and cosmic horror themes draw heavily from Lovecraft's mythos, and I think it does a great job of it. Sam Neill is so good in the lead. I just love Sam Neill as this hard-nosed, skeptical guy who's thrown into unimaginable horror, as possibly this writer is bringing things from other dimensions in to take over the world, to drive everyone insane. The overall feeling in the movie is so perfect for me. I love the theme of scary books, seeing all the cool book covers around, going into a super creepy town that seems controlled by this writer's creation. And it seems like the fabric of reality is changing within this town. A lot of cool practical monster effects. The effects are actually done by Greg Nicotero and Robert Kurtzman, who did such a great job. I particularly love the woman walking like crab backwards with her head bent over. Super creepy stuff. John Carpenter is my favorite director. I think this is one of his best movies, and that's gotta mean it's his most underrated film.
It's said the Overlook could have hurt us.
The Shining from 1997. We're breaking the rule of movies here. This is the TV miniseries adaptation of Stephen King's The Shining. And I watched this because my wife actually just read the book and she suggested we watch the movie again. And we've both seen the movie several times. And I said, why don't we watch the miniseries? Because I hear it's actually much closer to the book and I've always meant to see it. So we watched it, and I think this thing is very unfairly maligned. I actually like this a lot. Now, it's wild to compare this to Stanley Kubrick's film, which Stephen King famously hates because it changed the book so much. And based on seeing this miniseries and my wife telling me about the book, I've never actually read it. Yeah, he changed a lot. It's a great movie, but I did enjoy watching this version. I thought it was a really good story about characters I really cared about. Steven Weber and Rebecca De Mornay play Jack and Wendy. They're both incredibly different than their Kubrick versions, but I thought really good and interesting people. I particularly loved Steven Weber in this role. I think he is a great Jack Torrance, because unlike Jack Nicholson, who's super fun to watch and is just like a creepy manic weirdo from the start of the movie, I felt so bad for Steven Weber at the beginning of this. A guy who's clearly battling with some serious demons, is trying to be better, trying to be a good husband and father, and watching his very slow decline over 4.5 hours. This is 4.5 hours long. It was so sad, and I found myself really rooting for him, wanting him and his family to come out of this thing okay, but of course knowing eventually he's got to go full Jack Torrance, and once he does, I thought he was scary. Like, he's maniacal. They make him look pretty scary with makeup and blood running down his face, but also for how tragic it was. Like, I never felt bad for Jack Nicholson's Jack Torrance. I never felt like he was a tragedy, but I felt that here. So I cared about these characters, but where it falls the most short of Kubrick's version is it's nowhere near as scary, particularly with all of the ghost stuff. But I don't particularly need it to be. I can just enjoy watching a good story about characters that I'm interested in a spooky, ghost-filled, haunted hotel, even if I don't personally get scared. Sometimes it can just be a good story and have spooky ghosts around. And yes, some particularly bad effects. It's a TV movie, so whatever. Like, I completely understand why Kubrick changed the hedge animals to the hedge maze, because there's just no way to show moving hedge animals and make that scary or convincing on camera. So points for Kubrick there. That maze is great.
And there's nothing wrong with G-rated movies as long as there's lots of sex and violence.
As Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Elvira, Mistress of the Dark from 1988. So this is a goofy horror comedy that I often don't think to consider among my favorite horror movies. I mean, I made a list of my top 30 80s horror films, and I didn't think to put this one on there, but when I really think about it, I think it is. I think it is so fun, and it is such a staple of the Halloween season for me. The vibes are so perfect. I mean, I love Cassandra Peterson as Elvira. She is so much fun to watch. She actually co-wrote this movie to make sure her character stayed intact and wasn't watered down by Hollywood. And she succeeded. She is so funny and witty and charismatic. I just love to see her go into this very small, very conservative New England town because she inherited an old spooky mansion there and just kind of turn everything upside down, drive everybody crazy just by the fact that she's there, really exposing a lot of the actual evil in these people while she is weird and kooky and wacky and sleazy, but a really wonderful person who betters a lot of the people there, like helping out the movie theater to show horror movies. I love that whole plot, but you actually do get a horror storyline in here with her uncle being an evil warlock and trying to get a spell book from out of her house. And that stuff is all fun. It's all good. It makes this perfect for Halloween. But most of all, I just love to watch Elvira have fun in this town, do crazy stuff, and just be her wonderful self. Elvira's the best, and it even ends with her getting her own musical number. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark is wonderful. Before I go, I just want to send out a massive thank you to my patrons who truly make this channel possible. Thank you guys so much for supporting me, and if anyone else wants to support me, there's always a link to my Patreon in the description below. And I want to give a special shout out to Taylor, Jace, Brandwin, Sophia, and Sabrina Frang. You all absolutely rule. If you want checking these out for yourself, I do have streaming recommendations right here on screen, but of course those are subject to change, so I also have physical media links in the description, and using those does help support the channel. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure you do that because my next video will be on Halloween movies. October is going to be big here on the Cobwebs channel, so please don't miss it. It's going to be so much fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you so much. Happy Halloween. I'll see you next time.